war when we were at war with France, and he founded the order as a gift for his eldest son, who was Edward the Black Prince. And when the Black Prince died of typhoid, he lost heart in it a bit. So they were based at Windsor in the quadrangle. There used to be a hall in the quadrangle at Windsor where the round table was kept. Not yours. This was one that they actually used. And he lost heart in a bit, so he officially disbanded it. But the knights who were members said, well, we actually enjoy this, so we're going to keep meeting father, son, allowing new people to come in. And that's what they did. They're still about. They're a gentleman's dining club in St. James's now. They meet at different clubs each quarter and have dinner. But Glessock was a member. But after the First World War, things changed a lot, and people's perception of the whole idea of society changed. And Glessock turned round. He said, look, he said, we're all very noble and very wealthy. He said, but I'd like to make the order open to just good people and women. Well, they almost had a heart attack there. So he said, right, he said, if that's your attitude, I'm going and I'm taking all my money with me. And he came down here and he founded, to give it its full title, the Order of the Fellowship of the Knights of the Round Table of King Arthur. And that was 90 years ago this year, as we celebrated our 90th anniversary of the order being founded here. And the halls, so it actually makes this the world's largest collection of pre-Raphaelite stained glass. And we're really proud of that. Yeah. And apart from that, this is also Europe's largest marble and granite hall. Now, the joy here is the windows and the story that's told in them and the secrets hidden in the windows, and also the stones. There are things built into the halls that if you're not privy to the secrets, you won't know about it, which before the Second World War you wouldn't have known about it, but we're a little more forthcoming now. Now, even though there's a Masonic symbol over the front door, when Glessock died, his wife had to sell it. She couldn't afford to keep it going. So the Freemasons bought the halls and they use it as their meeting rooms. But the way it's laid out and what you've seen is not Masonic. It's the Order of the Fellowship. That's important to stress. But before we go round, I'll actually take you through the cabinets, because the siege of La Rochelle, that's when the Huguenots, the Protestants, were being persecuted by the Catholic troops. If you've seen the Three Musketeers, this is what Richelieu was actually wearing at the battle. This is one of the shields made for the bodyguard of the last Imam of Morocco, and it goes back to the 1920s. And there was about 140 of them, and they were all forged in steel. And when Marshal Lyautey arrived with the French Chasseurs d'Afrique, which is before they founded the Foreign Legion, being good Moroccan bodyguards, they dropped everything and ran. And I got in possession of that when I was stationed over there. But these underneath are morion helmets, fluted morion helmets from the English Civil War, about 1642. And these were used by pikemen and musketeers. But the musketeers tried to get rid of them as quickly as they could, because if you've got a musket going bang and you're wearing a steel helmet, it tends to make the ears ring a bit. Yeah. This is quite interesting. That's a museum replica of a Saxon warlord's helmet. I had lots of people say, was this what King Arthur's wearing? I said, no, this is what the enemy's wearing. This is what he's seeing on the battlefield. Right? And that's not a museum replica, that's a real thing. That's a Norman nasal bar helmet from the 12th century. That style of helmet was in operation for 600 years. You know, it was such a perfect example of a helmet. That's known as an Antioch, and it's probably one of the finest helmets ever made, incredibly comfortable to wear, and it was of great use in the Holy Land of Palestine during the Crusades, as was this. That's called a sugar loaf barbuta. It was right up until the 1850s, 1860s, when you bought sugar, it came in a big conical loaf that looked like that, and you used to cut chunks off and then grind it down with the pestle and mortar. That's what was known as a sugar loaf barbuta. And if any of you saw the television film Merlin with Sam Neill in, that's the sword that he used in the film, round the bottom there. My younger brother is a stuntman, and he acquires things occasionally. I don't ask. These are just a couple of pieces that have been brought in, sort of weapons from other countries. We've got a lovely katana here. It's about 250 years old. It's a beautiful piece. And we've got a bow and arrow and quiver set from Java. But that's a sword stick that I brought back from Kenya when I was stationed out there. That was actually made for one of the Maasai chieftains in Kenya. Now, this is a representation of the dragon banner. It's not the real thing. That only comes out once a year, and that's the first Saturday in every June when we have our big formal dinner here. That's when the ladies and the gentlemen, we're all dressed in our finery, and this is also when we invest new knights into the order. So this is just a representation. The real one is considerably larger and has huge black tassels, and the black border around it is much heavier. We also remove the tassels and the border when the king comes back. Now, being head of the order gives me a couple of perks, and one of them is the fact that that's my family helmet. Our shield, you can see there. Okay. Because my own family, where for about 600 years, we were the Royal Deerwall. First went up to Balmoral in the autumn of '69. Colonel McHardy was the factor of the estate. He said, "Oh, this is your first visit to Balmoral." He said, "Set of antlers as a souvenir." I said, "Oh, thank you very much." He said, "Yeah." He said, "They were shot this morning by the Queen, who was a championship shot." So I said, "Oh, brilliant." So when my dad turned round and said, "Oh," I said, "we could do with a new crest for the helmet," I said, "I tell you what, we'll use the Queen's antlers." "Righto," said Dad. So we've had them put on. Now, there's only one thing wrong. Stag's neck is like that. Mine is not. And real antlers weigh a ton. So you put this helmet on now, you feel yourself shrinking, you know. But even so, it's a nice story, and there it is. Here we've got some muniments belonging to the order when it first came down. And here in this cabinet you've got my collection of medieval Pilgrim's Badges. And when you were going around all the shrines, what you used to do is you'd pay a couple of farthings and you'd buy one of the pilgrim's tokens and you'd pin them on your walking stave, and it used to buy you brownie points in heaven, you know. And you've got holy water ampullars. It's the shrine of St. George. There's the cockle shell from St. James in Compostela, and that's Thomas Becket's. And you would soak a cloth or a bit of sponge in the holy water, jam it in, then put some beeswax in the top, so that you had the holy water with you. Or you could buy pilgrims' whistles, and if you blew them, the shrill sound was supposed to frighten away any evil, like the little pilgrims' bells as well. Now, over here, this is actually a collection of figures that one of our old members, he passed away a few years ago, and he left me all of these lead figures. And it shows you how knights developed from warriors up through to the high medieval period. And there's our founder, the Black Prince. Have you been to Canterbury Cathedral?
Yeah.
Yeah? In Canterbury Cathedral, that helmet and that shield are actually over the tomb of the Black Prince, the actual ones that he wore. That's quite something. And this is interesting. That's known as a salt, because salt was a very precious commodity. And during the medieval times, they used to have a great big long dining table, and the head of the family and the guests would be all up on end. And then the lesser guests, and when the servants had put the food out, they used to be at the bottom of the table. But the salt was always closest to the head of the family, because it was so precious. And then, which is where we get the term from, of people being below the salt. You know, the lesser important you were, the further you were away from the sword. Now, these three items are very special indeed. These don't belong to me. These are on permanent loan from a chap called Jan Kuspirik, who lives in Taunton. Now, if you actually look at the Arthur, he's not Celtic. He's not even British. He actually comes from Eastern Europe. If we were to look at him now, he's sort of Bosnia-Herzegovina. And his nation were called the Sarmatians. And they were the cavalry of the Roman imperial legions, what we used to call the foreign legions, if you like. And they came over here towards the end of the 1st century to man Hadrian's Wall. But they were never recalled. So the daughters married local boys, the sons married local girls, and they started to mix and mingle and interbreed and what have you. But of course, when Rome was in charge, if you got any sense, you joined the Roman army or the civil service, because you not only got pay, but you got a pension. This was the big ploy. So these Sarmatians, as Rome left, they stayed in this country because they were no longer pure. They were half local. And they moved down to the Welsh marches and then down here into the west of England. This is a museum replica of a very senior officer's helmet in the Sarmatian cavalry from the 4th and 5th century. This is what the Arthur would have been wearing on his head. Remember, Arthur's a title, it's not a name. He's the Arthur, like the Merlin. Right? This is a mail shirt, Sarmatian cavalry mail shirt, about the same size as a t-shirt, because you don't want it too long, because you're on a horse, and if you get chainmail caught out there, it's... But that weighs 25 kilos. Each link is forged and riveted, each separate one. But the great treasure is here at the back. The sword is not a museum replica. The grip has been put on by museum experts. It's cherry wood and bone, which is exactly the material used at the time. That is a very high-ranking Sarmatian officer's cavalry sword from the early 5th century. The man who had that in his hand knew the warlord that we would come to know as Arthur. That is a direct link with the man himself. If you wanted to look at an Excalibur, that's what it would be. The windows were done because he didn't tell her what to do. He encouraged the troops during the Crusades. During the Crusades, many British warriors adopted Islamic robes, and that's real history. Because when they actually stormed the castle and they went into his chambers, they said, oh gosh, black magic. No, it was algebra. He'd learned algebra and geometry from the Saracens, and he got these blackboards all over the walls, but they thought it was black magic. In his hand, he's got a star chart. Now, we call it the Plough, and the Yanks call it the Big Dipper. But the star that's on the right-hand side is Ursa Major, the Great Bear. And that's the Latinized version of the name Arthur. Now there you can see the Lady of the Lake, and she is carrying Excalibur. Remember, that isn't it. The sword that comes out the stone anvil is not Excalibur. Excalibur is given from the Lady of the Lake. And there you can see Morgana. And can you see the top of the baby's head that she's holding? That's Mordred. If you look, Merlin's eyes are not looking at Morgana. If you draw a straight line, Merlin's eyes are looking at the top of the baby's head that she's holding, because he is recognizing the fact that that baby will bring around the destruction of everything he has caused to be built. They up to their swords and they put them in their scabbards. And you can tell by the way their hair is dressed and the way they wear the cloths around their heads that these are virgin maidens. Because if you got married, your hair was a different style. If you had children, your hair was a different style. And if you were widowed, your hair was a different style. But we actually know from iconography that all those girls are virgins. So it doesn't happen a lot these days. Now, when Veronica was asked to do the windows of virtue, these were all given mottos. Some are from the Bible, some are from Shakespeare. These are all writings that were known in literature in the early part of, I would say, this century, the 20th century. I keep forgetting we've gone through another one. If they think you've mastered this, these curtains are open. Those curtains are closed at the far end. And then you come in here into the main body of the hall. Now it's a bit of a pity that it's this time of year, because in June, when we actually have our annual here, the windows get much more interesting. Who will not mercy unto others show? How can he mercy ever hope to have? Okay, you think, yeah, be merciful and you'll get mercy. But that's not exactly the meaning. The deeper meaning of that is down to me, because being knight seneschal, I've got magical powers and I can see the future, and you're going to die. Not quite sure how or when, you know, but you're going to pop your clogs. We hope that when the end comes. Now that's the spear of destiny that's supposedly carried by Longinus at the crucifixion when he pierces the side of Christ. That spear was also said to have been made by the prophet Phineas during the reign of Solomon the king. And it was said to have been made, the official description is, it is to be representative of the blood inherent in God's chosen people. And it was part of the regalia of the temple guards. That's why when Longinus witnessed the crucifixion, he grabbed hold of the spear and thrust it into the side of Christ to stop the crucifixion, to stop the agony. That's why this is actually known as the window of sympathy. But it's also the spear that's in the Grail castle. And when Sir Balin is being chased through the castle, he grabs hold of it without realizing what it is to defend himself and thrusts it into King Amphitass, who's chasing him, which pierces his groin and cripples him, rendering him as the Fisher King, the crippled king. And that's why the land goes waste, because the land and the king are one. If the king is crippled, the land is waste. But I can't give any, I'll tell you about that, and you've got a year to spare. But it's man is in grace, the lower will he be in his own esteem. And there you can see the sword, the symbol of knighthood, where it's surrounded by thorns. It's available to anyone. But if anything's worth having, it's worth going through the thorns for. Anything's worth working for, dying for, giving your life and love for, if it's worth anything at all. Have a look at this one here. Now here's one that takes us to the 29th of January, 1649. Whitehall, and he was led out to be executed on the morning of the 29th. He asked for Bishop Juxon, who was the Bishop of London, to be brought to him to give him communion, which was the last thing he had in his lips that day. And he read out the lesson of the day, "Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life." And the king said, "You fix that." And he said, "No, Your Majesty, look, it's the lesson designed to be read out today from the prophet Isaiah." And when the word got out to the royalist supporters, he became known as His Sainted Majesty, because they believed that it was by glorious design that he'd have to give up his life. And if you look, it is the globe, dominion over the globe, and there are three rays coming down on it. They are the three tongues of the Arwen, the supreme divine blessing. Here, truth is the highest thing that a man may keep, and you'll see a firebrand in front of the rising sun. They say that truth burns brighter than any flame known to mortal man. The glass that you'll see, even the tiny ones that form the borders, in every single window, including the ones in the galleries around the side, no two pieces of glass are the same. Somewhere, it is still representative of the king being present. You've made the journey. Remember me telling you that they were the dark windows that we started at? Well, it doesn't seem apparent, but now you stand here, look back and see how dark they are. because now you've come to the windows of light. And here at the windows of light, you can see Galahad, or Percival, depending on the version you read, being made of light, and there being shown into a ship, a magical ship. Now, this magical ship, according to medieval legend, it just doesn't go from one point to another. It actually takes you almost from one existence to another. And this magical vessel took him to a fabled land called Sardos. And in Sardos, he found a chapel. And there was the Holy Grail in this chapel. Now, there were two knights kneeling outside. They were both good and responsible for killing his own brother. So they were good knights, but not good enough to go in. He was the only one that was allowed to go in. Galahad always says in the tales, "My strength is as of the strength of 10, for my heart is pure." Personally, I always want to slap him. He sounds like a, never mind. But he's the one that's allowed in. When he goes in, he sees an altar. On the altar is the spear that bleeds, and on the center of the spear is the Grail. And he finds it's larger than he first thought. It's not a cup, it's considerably bigger. When he goes up to it, and this you don't find in many versions, this only appears in the High History of the Holy Grail, there's a baby, and the baby's wearing a crown, and the baby has the wounds of the crucifixion. And the baby looks at him and smiles, puts its hand into the side where the spear has made the wound on the adult, gives him a piece of its living flesh, and he dies in ecstasy, having taken it. And he dies and vanishes, the Grail Chapel vanishes, the Grail and the spear all vanish from the sight of man. That's why the quest still goes on. Now the table is over a ton. I say this is the focal point of when we have our dinner each year. Now, I told you there were one or two things hidden, but before we go on to that, I also told you that I like to come here and spend a quiet 10 minutes in the morning. I tend to sit here, and I look at my favourite window, which is that one. Honour all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honour the king. And that is the badge that we still wear suspended on a ribbon around our necks, or with the ladies on a bow. And there you can see the dragon, who is Arthur, rising out of the round table, which is the world. And of course in medieval tales they believe that the world itself was a great living dragon, and that we lived within its coils. And have you seen the shields have now got so light, on this side they're as close to white as it can get. And the very last window is love is the fulfilling of the law. Just to remind you that without love you can't achieve anything. Now, this is that way, you can see the shield of the king. Now, according to legend, when the king was born here at Tintagel Castle, he was immediately taken down to Merlin's cave. And that's where Merlin was waiting on his horse. And he took the baby and rode to Worcestershire. And there he handed the baby over to Sir Ector de Malvern. And he said to Sir Ector, he said, "Guard this child well. This child is very important." Now, Sir Ector had his own son, Sir Kay.
Dat is even een persoonlijke rondleiding.
Ja.